Is it possible to make $1 million or more from just one high-quality Airbnb property? Stick around to find out. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Airbnb ABCs. When I started doing the research for this video, I just arbitrarily picked the $1 million mark because a lot of folks, you want to be millionaires out there. That is a dream that a lot of folks have, especially if you're getting into investments and investing in real estate like Airbnb properties. And when I started looking at this to see what on the numbers, I was looking at if you buy a good Airbnb, this is some place that's in a high demand vacation rental area that is good for doing short-term rentals. And, it's a reasonably priced Airbnb or VRBO or short-term rental at like the $500,000 mark. Could you, come up with $1 million at the end of this if you hold this thing long-term? Now, we're going to make a lot of assumptions here, but a lot of these are going to be on the very conservative side, and I'm not saying that it's going to be easy to get through this whole thing. So we're talking about a 30-year hold here on an Airbnb property. And then there will also be people out there that are saying that $1 million isn't a lot of money anymore, or it won't be a lot of money in 30 years. And to those folks, I say, show me your $1 million.
Show me the money! Show me the money!
Then you can tell me that it is not a lot of money, because right now, most people don't even have $1,000 in their checking account to cover an emergency. So for me, for most people out there, I'm going to say that $1 million, even 30 years down the road, is going to be a lot of money. So let's look at how much money you can potentially make over, in total with everything all included over the 30-year hold term of the typical 30-year mortgage. So to set the parameters for this, we are going to look at a cabin or at a beach property or someplace that is very high in demand that will always rent. For me, it's the Smoky Mountains. It could be Destin, somewhere else on the Florida Gulf Coast that's just always going to work for short-term rentals. We're going to look for some place that's about $500,000. You can be, a little above or below that, but in the Smoky Mountains, that's going to probably get you up into, at max, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, real log cabin, or is the wood type log cabin that everyone is really looking to get into. You're going to want it with a view. It's going to have to be a good property for these all of these numbers to work. And you're going to use conventional finance, like a 30-year mortgage for 10 to 20% down. It depends on what you want to do with the loan. If you are legitimately going to use it as a second home so that you can get that 10% down second loan. But I want to start first with the cash flow end of this, because this is what a lot of people are into, because they want to make money on these short-term rentals to pay for things in their life, like new cars or vacations or anything that comes up. The money coming out of these short-term rentals in the form of cash flow is a lot of times the most important thing, because there is a lot more work that goes along with this on a day-to-day basis than a long-term rental or a stock market investment or something that's at least a little bit more passive. I usually just like to have the amount of $1,000 a month in cash flow after all of your expenses are paid. And the reason for this is because there are tremendous amount of variables about how your property cash flows, how much money that you put down. If you put down 100%, if you just pay cash for it, you're going to have a much higher cash flow than someone that's got a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month mortgage or more, depending on the size of the property. The expenses and the things that come up on on a surprise basis, all of these things can influence your cash flow, month to month, year to year, and obviously as time goes on, your cash flow should increase if you have a fixed rate mortgage and you can keep your place in pretty good shape. So $1,000 a month makes for $12,000 a year, and that is going to get you $360,000 at the end of that 30 years in cash flow, probably on the low end of things. And the best part about that is all of that money is going to be tax-free. Now, I'm not saying that I know everyone's tax situation or your tax problems or whatever, but when you are investing in real estate, oftentimes a lot to most of the income, or all of it, is sheltered by the amount of tax write-offs you can get from just regular operating expenses, and then depreciation of the building usually shelters the rest of that income. And just as an aside, if you would take just half of that income, invest it in a low-cost S&P 500 fund, and keep that for 30 years at the average 10% rate, and you only put $6,000 a year into that, at the end of that 30 years, just that would be worth $1 million. If you put all of it, $2.17 million. But while the cash flow is fun, and that is what most people are looking for, because you want money in your pocket to play with, the equity gains are where you are going to make the most amount of money in real estate. And I really don't care if you're in long terms or short terms or commercial or something. In general, I have made more money out of equity from note pay down and appreciation than I have ever made through cash flow. And so again, we are looking at a $500,000 place, and let's just say we put 20% down to secure this loan. So you have $100,000 into this. You could be down as low as 10%, or if you bought it as a primary residence and lived in it and fulfilled all those things, you might even be down as low as 3.5%. But for this, we're looking at 20% down. So you got 100K in it, and we are looking at an appreciation rate of the entire U.S. real estate market of between 3 and 5% on average. Now, that is for your average home out there. In general, places that are in high demand areas that have properties that generate a profit will get a higher level of appreciation. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to use 3%. We are going to go on the low end of the national average. After 30 years of owning this piece of rental property, it should be worth $1.21 million. And if that's a number that you don't think is realistic, you can do the math yourself at just a low 3% rate of inflation or rate of appreciation, which probably is actually going to be below the rate of inflation in a lot of years. You're looking at a $700,000 increase in the value of the property from when you bought it. If you add your $360,000 of cash flow to that, you're already at $1.06 million. And so right there, we have already gotten to our $1 million mark, but it gets better from there. If you look at this from a 5% rate of appreciation, which in these hot markets is probably you're probably closer to 5 than you are to 3. The increase in gain in the property and at the end of your 30 years is going to be $2.16 million. And so, that's something to think about when you're looking for these properties. So with your 3% rate of appreciation, you've got that $700,000 increase in the value of the property, but that's not the only thing that's working for you for your equity. You have made payments, mortgage payments, funded by guest stay fees for 30 years. And so now you have this rental property that is paid off, and it's valued at approximately $1.2 million. So, if you take away your $100,000 that you put into this property on the front end, you have made $1.1 million in equity total from the appreciation of the house and from the note pay down and being completely paid off minus your $100,000. And so you have made, with your $360,000 of cash flow that you have gotten from this, $1.46 million in total. But the thing is that most of that, other than the cash flow, is all in paper gains. You cannot spend equity just, on a credit card. You can if you get a HELOC or if you monetize it in some way, or you refi it and you get that money out, but then you're still servicing a mortgage after 30 years of paying it off, and you're dealing with guests on a day-to-day basis. And let's just say that you're tired. You've had enough of the short-term rental game, because there are days, even with me only being, 3 years into this, that it's just like, I'm done. Like, I can't handle these people. These buildings are breaking down. And so there is a fatigue that would probably set in after 30 years. And so you want to sell. And now you're thinking, what is the capital gains tax going to do to, my total amount? The nice part is that you're not going to be taxed on that whole $1.2 million. You're only going to be taxed on the capital gain, which is the difference between what you sold it for and what you bought it for. In this case, we are looking at a capital gains tax of $700,000. And now tax rates in situations, again, are going to vary widely depending on how much you make, depending on when you sell it. It's generally thought of that tax rates in the future are going to be higher than the tax rates are right now. But for all intents and purposes, and not being able to guess and foresee the future where tax rates are going to be, I'm just going to use the rates today towards the end of 2023 in September. And when you're looking at what those rates are, long-term capital gains are taxed differently than short-term capital gains or your normal income, be it 1099 or W-2. For the federal taxes, the top rate right now is 20%, and right now a $700,000 capital gain would put you in that top 20%. Depending on what state you're in, you could be taxed at different rates. I am in the state of Kentucky, and for us, it's a flat 5% long-term capital gains tax. And so when you take your $700,000 capital gain and you take out 25% of that, you are going to pay a whopping $175,000 to the federal and the state for the luxury of having owned property and sold it for a profit here in the United States. And what that's going to leave you with right there is an amount of $525,000 of equity gain left from your sale, plus the $400,000 of equity gain being the difference between the $500,000 that it cost to buy the place and the $100,000 that you had to put down, and your $360,000 of cash flow that you made during this time if you didn't invest any of it and you may be sitting on $360,000 or you've already spent it. Either way, you've made the $360,000 is going to leave you with a total after tax. You've paid all of the crowns, all of their money that they want, so that you can do business in their country. You are going to be sitting on $1.3 million at the end of the day. Now, if you guys have already spent all of your cash flow, you're going to be looking at about $925,000 just in the equity sale of your property. But that is it in a nutshell. You are going to easily be able to, at the end of 30 years, using very conservative numbers, come up with $1.3 million in total gain after taxes in your pocket. And so once you've wrapped your head around that, if you look at that and say, how much money do I want? How many of these things do I need? And you can start planning out, do I need 2, 3, 4, 5 of these things? If you buy ones that are of substantially more value, like $1 million or $2 million, the numbers go up dramatically. If you use a number that is not on the low end of the appreciation scale, which a lot of times is not the case with these highly in-demand vacation properties. You're looking at 3 or 4, 5, even more percent. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's just the way that money works, especially when you look at the rate of inflation and being able to either keep pace with or exceed the rate of inflation with your appreciation. You can start, laying down, I need 3 of these things, and at the end of my 30 years, I will have $3.9 million sitting in a bank account. So guys, that's a way that you can plan out for your retirement in addition to your 401ks and your individual investing or anything else that you invest in. But it is almost, you would almost have to actively try to screw it up to not end up with at least $1 million in your pocket at the end of this game if you play your cards right and you take good care of your places and your guests. Subscribe down below if you haven't subscribed yet to this channel. If you guys are seeing these things right here in the corners right now, I'll tell you all about the kind of cabins that we buy. We have bought 3 cabins for the average purchase price of about $520,000. So we got 3 of these things that are baking in the oven right now for long-term wealth growth, and you guys can see exactly the types of cabins that we buy, how we manage them from afar, and all the trials and tribulations that you're going to have to deal with between now and that 30-year payday. I appreciate you guys watching today. I'll see you in the next one.